Lance Anderson, K-Star's call-in show. I hope you'll join us this morning and participate. Give us a call here, 801-224-1414. We've just had an election, and I wanted to talk about that a little bit. I want to talk about it a lot. Let me give a couple of quotes here, first of all, that I've used in the past several times about our nation, from our founding fathers. And again, I hope you participate. 224-1414 here on K-Star. Our founding fathers made the observation. This is quoting from John Adams. Our Constitution was made only for a moral and a religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. That's a truth. And when you hold an election, you and I can't do this. God can do it. We can do it partially. We're blinded to a large degree of what's inside the hearts of a lot of people. But an election is not just who won. Who won? If we first of all believe our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people and is wholly inadequate to the government of any other, if you look at the way people vote, who they vote for, the laws which those people who are running have said, I favor this law, or I oppose that law, I believe in this, I don't believe in that. It's also a barometer, a measuring stick of the morals of the people. How close are they adhering to being a moral and a religious people? It measures that. So it's not just a measure of who won, but it's a morality measure. It's a values measure. In our schools, it's a measure of what do you want your children taught. When you elect one group of people, they're going to be the board of directors of your school, the administrators, so to speak. The way you vote is a measure of what you want your children taught. There are some limits on it imposed on us by the federal government and our state legislature. But what do these people think? What do they believe in? And I remember years ago running against a fellow, and I knew quite a few things about him, which didn't come out until after I lost the election, about his personal life. I never told a soul. Well, I told my wife. And the people who brought it to my attention were, of course, aware of his double life. But when I ran, I never told anybody about it. I never raised the issue. And I told myself as I went about debating this fellow, this will be a measure of the spiritual awareness of the people here in the county as to whether they'll sense what they're getting here. My greatest sense of sorrow for this man was he had a daughter who used to campaign with him all the time. She'd go to the debates. She would go to the exchanges, discussions, conventions and stuff. And she was the cutest little girl, and she loved her dad. And she'd campaign for him, and she'd always smile at me. And I remember as I watched her thinking, what is she going to feel when she finds out what her dad really is? How is she going to feel then? Of course, I couldn't tell her, and I didn't. But 8 or 9 months after the election, then it became public, partially, of this man's double life. And you carry stuff inside. I remember when my father was running for office. After he died, I went through some of his I went through a lot of correspondence. But I came across a letter he had written his mother about his campaigning and his efforts. And he talked about the fact that he was an adult and he took the slings and the arrows. But he said what made him feel bad was to see the stuff taken out on his children, people in our ward, people in our stake who took it out on his own family. But his observation was people came out of it stronger. That is, we kids. God never was surprised by anything that happened. Nobody's ever given a test they can't pass if they'll stand up. It's in them. Take it. So he didn't get too distraught about the opposition he brought on us brought on himself. That's part of life. And I've thought about that during this election. Every time there's an election, I think, what's going on behind the scenes? What's really happening out there? One of the people that I promoted on my campaign, on my radio show here, was Scott Bradley. He ran for the state legislature, or state U.S. Senate. Man, my mind, I'm flipping pages here and talking out loud, and I better start paying attention to my own show here. Anyway, he ran for the U.S. Senate. He got 5.7% of the vote. He raised less than $50,000. His primary opponent was Mike Lee, who got 78.1% here in Utah County, which is pretty good. And I certainly hope Mike Lee, I wish him the best, and I certainly hope he does well. By well, I mean I hope he votes right. And I'll just reiterate why I hope you watch him, and why I hope you write letters to him, and why I hope you keep his feet to the fire. Because my observation, and I'll explain why here, is I don't think he's got it in him. I don't think he's got it in him to hold to correct principles. He may, but the reason I doubt that he does is he ran with that crowd before he turned on them and said, I'm going to run for office. He gave John McCain $1,000 for his campaign, and 2 years ago, he gave Bob Bennett $500 for his 2010 race. And this was 3 weeks after TARP, after Bob Bennett got the tag of Bailout Bob, because he voted for almost $1 trillion in bailout for the banks. And yet Mike Lee gave him $500 3 weeks after he had that vote. 2 years after he had voted or tried to promote a health care bill as bad or worse than the president's bill, which we're now saying is so terrible, he had gone with a Democrat, another senator, and proposed a bill. I read it. It's 18 pages long. It wasn't that long, but it had mandatory health insurance for everybody in this country, with fines for those who didn't do it. That was Bob Bennett's health care bill, one of the reasons he got thrown out. Well, those problems did not bother Mike Lee. He gave that man money after his $1 trillion bailout stuff, and after a year and a half, 2 years after his health care bill. And so I point that out to say Mike doesn't have many things you can look at as far as political office and votes you can look at, but you can see the friends he ran with. You can see who he gave money to. And you have to judge him based on their values, who he supported. I say that saying, how many people have you given $500 to? How many people have you given $1,000 to for their campaign? Usually you give money to people whose values you support. I ran for office. I asked people for money. A few gave it. I had a few who pointed out, well, we're good friends, but that doesn't mean we agree politically, and so I'm not going to support you financially, but we're still friends, which I agree. I have friends of the left persuasion, but I don't send them money, and they don't send me money. So anyway, I point that out. I really hope that Mike Lee, as a senator, votes right. But I'm afraid he's a fair-weather constitutionalist. That is, he can wrap himself in the words of it, but he doesn't have the principles inside him because of who he's voted for in the past, who he's given money to in the past. And only after he decided to run for office did you suddenly find out Bailout Bob never should have voted for that TARP. And Socialist Bob never should have voted for that health care bill. And yet here he was supporting the man himself. Well, that's enough of beating up on Mike Lee. But I say that not just to beat up on him, but because I hope that you'll write him letters. I hope you'll send him emails. I hope you'll let him know, hey, some people out here heard what he said. They heard what he said. And they hope that his other life, his political life behind the scenes, is not what is going to carry him the next 6 years, that he'll just fall in with the normal party hacks, which he was perfectly comfortable with and willing to support with his vote and his money before he decided to run for office. All right, enough of that. Now, I wanted to get on to the local race here, and again, I wanted to point out that the measure, if you're God, and I'm not God, but if you're God, and if you believe that the vote of a nation represents what their values are, because they are allowed to elect their people who are going to represent them, if the election then becomes a measure of their morality, their sense of right and wrong, what their nature is, then elections become real important, a measuring rod of what our values are. Now, I had a fellow who I had on our show, what's it been, 3 weeks ago now, Scott Bell, and I asked him to call in this morning to give us his response to the election. Let me point out by stating that Scott Bell got beat. I feel bad about that. He's a good man. Scott?
Good morning. How are you?
Well, good. Are you through licking your wounds, or? Get your perspective on someone who got beat. I can sympathize with you.
Yeah, I didn't run out of ambition, so it's not a hit to the pride factor or anything there. So I just was interested in improving our community. So.
What's been the response of your wife and children to it? Are they shouting for joy that you're not in the cauldron of being called names and mislabeled and hated? How are your neighbors treating you?
That is one thing with politics, is you really find out quickly who your friends are, and we've made some great friends with this campaign, and just had.
Well, I'm one of them.
Wonderful supporters that I just want to thank publicly as much as possible. I just cannot talk highly enough of them.
Well, that's good. How many? How much? Well, I guess you can't measure this, but what kind of support did you get out there?
We had quite a bit of support. I think that when we recognized that I was going up against a 12-year incumbent, somebody that is very entrenched in the system, that is has been an educator and is endorsed by the teachers union and has the PTA arm that has fully backed her, and we were able to get 44% of the vote here, despite all of that. So I think we had quite a bit of support, and I think it's unfortunate some of the tactics that were utilized just there on election day. But like you said, I think when I came on your show the first time before the election, you had a statement that kind of hit me that said, how do you campaign as a Christian when you're supposed to love your neighbor and you don't want to say bad things about him? But we made a conscious decision with the campaign to keep it clean, and I don't want to say that cost us the election, but I think we could have done a little better had we not kept it so clean. You know what I mean?
Yeah, made people more aware of issues that involve personal. Like one thing that probably most people don't know is that the Utah Taxpayers Association, they came out against Jody because she voted to increase taxes so consistently, and yet she was putting on her stuff that she was a conservative. And the Utah Taxpayers Association were trying to arouse people that Jody may say she's a conservative, but that's not her vote. I guess I shouldn't even use her name. In the past, I've tried to remember not to do that so it doesn't get too personal. But your opponent,
yes,
wrap themselves in the conservative image when she's anything but that. And again, you didn't bring that to everybody's attention, but the Utah Taxpayers Association did, that this person is trying to say something that they're not. You know, something else, going over this with Susie, she pointed out a very positive side to this thing. One of them is that out of the election, let me see, where are my other notes here? People who voted for change, and you're one of those people who voted for change, and people knew that they were going to get change if they got you in there. 15,685 votes for people who wanted change. Those who did not want change, which would include your opponent, 16,221 votes. I'm talking total. So the total difference only comes to 536 votes.
Wow.
So that says something. Also, 3 of the 4 incumbents were put out. One of the incumbents I wanted to keep, and he got tossed out too. But 3 of the 4 incumbents went out. And so what you have done, you've raised awareness. I know you're in one area of Orem where you campaigned, but you've put signs up, you've advertised, you've talked with friends and neighbors. They don't happen to all live in your neighborhood, but you raised awareness. You raised awareness to the tune of 536 votes difference. 31,900 votes cast. Total difference 536. So you've done some good there. These other people have done some good.
Yeah, that's a great way to great perspective on that now.
Yeah, and you've got 2 people in there. I think they're going to be strong. I think they will be. Osborne was in there before, and he was kind of a lone voice in the wilderness. I'm sorry he's gone, but there's two there now.
Yeah, in fact, I know Wendy and Paula pretty well, and I've got a lot of respect for both of them, and they've got a great perspective on what's happening, and they're great leaders. I know that Wendy is in the process of really inspiring citizens to get more involved and parents to get more involved and join the school community councils, find out what's going on, and not just look at our schools as a glorified daycare, but to really get involved and put more attention and focus on education and be a watchdog as far as the political agendas that potentially could be creeping into our schools, even here in Utah County.
Yeah, when I got into looking into the conventions that our administrators attend and their participation with it, and then the stuff they've picked up and brought home to our schools here in the Alpine School District, that's a wake-up call. It reminded me, years ago I read a book called Witness by Whittaker Chambers. I've read it 3 or 4 times since then, but he was a communist who ran a communist cell in Washington, D.C. He later left. He became a Christian, and he left, and he was this book's over 800 pages, but he talks about, he was a senior editor at Time magazine, and very successful, a very good writer. In fact, my dad had a pile of books on communism and socialism, and this one he had marked up more than any because he said he used to try to figure out how to get inside the mind of a communist, inside the mind of a socialist, see the way they think, the humanists, and see the way they think and why they could go in that direction. And he said most people are so ignorant that you could quote Marx and Lenin to them and they would not even know it.
Yeah.
They would not even know it. And he said, and these were good Americans, deceived. And that's what we've got going on here in the Alpine School District. We have administrators quoting humanists, creating an environment for the socialist, the atheist, the humanist, putting them right up on the walls. And as Susie pointed out, 32 of the 35 things up on one of the walls where one of her children went were socialists, humanists, atheists.
Yes.
And nobody knew it. And she didn't stop to look. And then these are the people the Alpine School District is parading out there for our children to look to. Somehow they couldn't find quotes which the left would not dare challenge. Things like George Washington's farewell address, where he talks about religious and moral people, and Samuel Adams, John Adams, Patrick Henry. There's all kinds of great quotes that could be used, but they don't find the time to use them. Instead, they're parading their socialist friends. Well, I got on my wagon. Hey, what else do you want to tell us? Go ahead.
I did. You reminded me of something that really hit me as I was campaigning. We did a lot of door-to-door. That was our main strategy, and I was able to speak with people that were very supportive, people that were very anti. But what I really appreciated was the opportunity to speak with educators that are in the trenches and seeing what's really happening. And I had the opportunity to listen and really understand from their perspective. And they are afraid of somebody coming in to just tell them what to do and to change everything up. And so I assured them that was not my intent. I'm not coming in to tell the teachers what to do, but I had the opportunity to listen and find out what their challenges were. And I realized that a lot of teachers are dealing with students that are coming from single-parent households or a divorce situation where the child is at their mom's one week and then their father's the next week, or abuse that may be going on, or a lot of the social challenges that our society faces. And when somebody such as Goodlad comes in to analyze education and provide solutions, it is attractive for a lot of educators, and it does seem like, wow, at least somebody is proposing a solution. Now, the solution may be let Big Brother take over, let the government fix these problems, let's let the educators become the parents, let's overstep our bounds, let's do this and this and this. And it is a solution. It's not the correct solution, but it is a solution, and it resonates
Obama's
with a lot of people.
got cures for our nation too, and a lot of people woke up.
Yeah. So I sympathize with the educators' situation, and I think what we really need is our families and our communities and church to step up and assist with solving some of these social challenges, so that it is not on the back of government to come in and force us to do things a certain way and fix these issues.
Well, I hope you or someone like you will be looking again to run in 4 years. I don't know what's going to happen. I understand, I was talking with Oak earlier this morning, and he said that because of the shift of the population, it's not just going to be congressional districts that are going to be redistricted. School districts may be redistricted because there's so much population out in Lehigh and Eagle Mountain and going out in that direction, that end of the county, that population-wise, they're going to have to redistrict the various voting districts for the Alpine School District, and we'll probably lose one here somewhere and pick up another one out there.
If you just look at the total votes, I mean, from my area, we only had 6,200 votes. But if you look at Paula Hill's area, because of the growth over the last 10 years, she had almost double. She had 11,000 votes, and Wendy's area had 9,400 votes. So you can just see, based on the voter turnout, that there has been a ton of growth up north, and on the south end, there will be redistricting because they did the census this year.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure exactly how that's going to pan out, but most likely Orem, which currently has 3 seats on the Alpine School Board, will most likely drop down to 2.
Well, that wouldn't be... well, I won't go there.
Well, it becomes very big, and I think we're still in the wake of the Jordan School District split, which, that had its drama and challenges, but smaller school districts are, there's pros and cons, and
Yeah.
the more I think about it, the more I think that there are a lot more pros with dividing Alpine School District and making at least two districts out of what is currently Alpine.
Yeah, get some more local control. I remember years ago they tried to put that option on the voting. What do you call it? The ballot.
Yes.
And I think Orem City's administrators decided they weren't going to let it on. And I thought that's interesting.
Yeah, there was some irony around that, and I got a little more information from Brad Daw, who's my representative for Utah House.
Uh-huh.
And what happened was it was a city council meeting that they were going to discuss splitting Orem from Alpine School District, and the conversation was kind of twisted into discussing the issue with the investigations math. And so rather than having a discussion on splitting the school district, they presented basically the proposal of removing investigations math from the curriculum and completely
Pretending that
bypass
solved the problem.
democratic process.
Yeah.
Which is the irony with their mission statement touting democracy, how they used some tactics to divert using the democratic system and put all the focus and attention on a separate issue and divert.
Well, that kept the vote from being made available to the people,
Mm-hmm.
and that may explain why a couple of members of the board meet with the city leaders. Every month or so they got their own little meeting to make sure they're all in this together.
And that's a good strategy
To
from the
stop
board.
us.
I mean, to keep great relations with the different city leaders.
But they don't do it with the other cities.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, nuts. Well, I wish you'd gotten in there. That would have. I drove by the. I should have gone over and stepped it off because it looked to me like they were too close. But I thought your opponent's campaign people were violating the law. I shouldn't say that out loud because I did not step it off. Just a mental look of distances. But I thought they were too close to the polling. But they had these big signs up there, and attacking you.
Yeah.
Saying how he's like this, and your opponent claims that they're a conservative, and the misuse of words, and accusing you of being a homeschooler, which of course is true. But I thought, you ought to thank a man who cares enough about your children to say you ought to have some more options out there. You need another voice in here, and it would certainly be good to have someone who's smart enough to know that Goodlad should not be the source of virtue in the Alpine School District, and the man whose stuff they're putting plastering up on the walls. You're swimming just like we couldn't get a vote on the school district. You have people in high places who are steering the ship, and it's not the direction they ought to be going, and it's not the way that most people, if they knew about it. I mean, you look at this Save ASD website, which Susie and Ork put together. That was only up there 3 weeks before the election. 3 weeks. Raising the issue of these 4 candidates ought to be elected. They got 5,000 hits, 15,000 page reads off of that one website there in the 3 weeks. That's the famous wish we could have got there a whole lot faster. But a whole lot of people are unhappy with the Alpine School District. And I don't think those people are going to change their ways. I think Goodlad's still going to be there. He'll still be tucked away. I think the socialists, the humanists are still going to get quoted. And I just thought how sad it is that these people that run the place can say, well, we can't preach Mormonism, so we're going to teach atheism, we're going to teach evolution, we're going to teach socialism, we're going to teach humanism, we're going to teach all this other stuff that's antichrist. And they do it. And most people don't realize that is the sea that they're swimming in, the sea that their children are swimming in. They don't have to go clear to the bottom. It's kind of like these fish and thousands of feet in the bottom of the air. They've lost their eyes. They can't see anything. They're swimming in darkness, and they don't know it. That's the environment that the leaders have led us into, feigning, well, we have to do this because we can't preach anything about religion. And they've gone all the way over the anti-religion, the humanist side, the no values, no morals, no absolutes.
I think a lot of that has to do with our desire to be like the rest of the country. And there's within education, there is a comparison game going on, and there's a lot of money being spent to find out how well we measure up to the rest of the country or other states or other counties, other districts, and I think that a lot of the philosophies that we are seeing, it's crept in through universities, and it's a national agenda. But I feel we do have a lot of great teachers here. A lot of stuff is not as blatant in our classrooms as it is in other parts of the country, and what I do want to be careful of is labeling all of our teachers or generalizing too much that we alienate our teachers or some administrators. And so
I agree with that. And I've talked to teachers who have said, I don't teach that stuff.
Exactly.
I had a big fight over sex education years ago.
Yeah.
And I talked with one of the teachers involved in it, and he just told me, he says, I don't agree with this stuff either. He says, so I just plain don't teach it. It's in there. I'm supposed to. If you look at the values clarification and get into their sex education stuff, it actually starts clear back in kindergarten. It's lighter stuff back then, obviously. Yeah. But I think he was a 4th or 5th grade well, I don't know. I shouldn't even say. Well, he's retired now anyway. Okay. But he said, I just don't teach this stuff. He said, I agree with you. But he was making the same observation. You can't blast them all, even though the school board, supports this stuff. And
yeah, and that's where it starts, is at the top. That's why we need to get some change, and I feel like we've made a great start on bringing in some like-minded people to represent the majority of this community, and I think Paula and Wendy will do a great job, and I've also heard that this race kind of shook up my opponent a little bit, and I think we'll see. I think we'll see a lot more representation from more than just educators and PTA from my opponent. I think we'll see some changes, and that's a positive thing.
Well, I hope there's some changes. Unfortunately, the status quo, at least for 2 more years, is going to feel like they beat us. And they can continue to push the John Goodlad stuff and continue to have the appearance of scrubbing up their website. You probably didn't hear my show last week. Was it the week before? I talked about when I was in the Army about walking in on a guy who was crying in the Army Reserve. This goes back a lot of years. And I went over to him, and I was in the Army Reserve. This was up at Fort Lewis, Washington. And I went over to him, I said, what's wrong? And this guy, he pulled up his sleeve, and he had this big old ugly tattoo on it. And then I thought he'd gotten bad news or something, but he said, I was out with some of my friends last night, and this guy held a responsible position in his ward, LDS fellow, and he looked at this, pulled up his sleeve and showed me this tattoo. He says, how am I going to explain this to my wife? And he was there crying about it. because he was now having to face the fact that when he could, he led a double life of sorts. Not as bad as some, but to me, what's happened here is this tattoo on the Alpine School District. The opponents of it have pulled up the sleeve on it, and that man was considering, am I going to change my life? I can't hide what I've been doing.
Yeah.
As easily now, and you men and women, you've pulled up the sleeve on the Alpine School District, and that man was considering changing his life. I doubt these people are. I doubt they are, because they're now feigning that they've changed, but I don't believe they've changed, and I hope they have, but I doubt it.
That's why we need a lot more people getting involved in individual schools on the most local level and getting their voice heard. And
these two new people that are in there now, like you say, they're good moral people, they're good strong people, but they're going to get beat down unless they get supported. They're going to get beat up. It's lonely at the top. I remember when my dad was in the state legislature, he was given a trophy at the governor's ball one year for having voted against more legislation than anybody they'd ever had up there. And the little trophy had inscribed on it, Mr. No. And after my dad died, I went through his correspondence. He had one letter from an extremely liberal Democrat up in Salt Lake. Extremely liberal. And he wrote my dad a letter. At the end of it, he said, I salute you. You know, as a man who truly lives by his principles, that men can govern themselves. Because he said, I feel how lonely you must feel as I see your no vote go up there. Time and time and time again. This man observed that. He said, how lonely you must feel. Well, I hope that these two new people stick to their guns, that they stick to the values that SaveASD.com has been trying to say, this is what ought to be going on, this is not what should be going on, because they're going to get pressure now. Don't be a rebel rouser. Can't we all just get along? Mm-hmm. And your opponent and these other people that are happy with the humanist doctrines, happy with the socialist stuff, are going to try and say, can't we all just get along now? And by the way, did you notice that there's only two of you here now?
So one more than before.
Right. There's one more than before. And so I hope you people in the Alpine School District, you'll get out and support these people. Let them know that they're not alone. They're on the point of the spear, but it's going to go on. I know I talked, after I read a bunch of the Alpine School District minutes, went through a bunch of them, and I thought, why is it that there's nothing that's ever said at these meetings? There's nothing going on here. And I found out later that, all the discussions are made behind the scenes. The decisions on how they're going to vote are made behind the scenes. There's very little that goes on that is public. They want to have that appearance of unity. We're one big happy family, the Bobbsey twins running together here, you know. And I'm hoping that these two new ladies don't get dragged into that. We're going to be
safe there.
Yeah, because that's no way to run an operation.
It's true. I also need to say that we've got a couple other members of the board there that have really stepped up. That I don't think that they've gotten enough credit for their sticking their neck on their line. Really,
is that right?
For example, Terry Peterson. I know he's one that he represents Southeast Orem, and he was the one who brought up. I think it was back in June or May, he brought up the mission statement and wanted it changed immediately, and so I think he's another one that he doesn't get enough credit for really doing his part and speaking up for our values.
Well, maybe there's more hope there to alter things than I have sensed or felt.
Yeah.
But I hope you're right. I hope that these other people. We don't need wilting flowers in there to go up against your opponent. That's not what this school district needs. And maybe some of these other people, now that they've got some more, maybe they'll come out from under the shadows and speak up and try and change direction and watch the budget and see where they're spending their money.
Yes.
See what kind of things, see what kind of school books they're actually bringing in there. You know, where are they coming from? Do we just say the school board likes it? I always felt sorry for city councilmen because the city manager, he'd often lead people around by the nose. The city council didn't have time to see it, and so they just trusted the city council or the city manager to run the place. And he could lead them anywhere he wanted. And that's what I'm afraid's happened in the Alpine School District, is they lead these people around by the nose, and it's too easy to let them do their thing. And look how far they got. Look how far they got.
Yes. We just need more people to get involved. Everybody leads a busy life, and so many things are so much more important, but we need to realize these local elections and getting involved in our local schools and local politics, it's really important for ourselves, our own family, and our communities.
Yeah, if you get involved, you can help. I know I sent off my check to the county yesterday for my property taxes.
Yeah.
And 70.12%, I think that's what it was, or just over 70% of my property tax goes to support the Alpine School District. Over 70%. All my income tax that I pay goes to support schools in general.
Yes.
That's a lot of money.
Let's get involved.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you need to speak up, people. This is your money. You know, something else I felt bad about when I was sending off my check, I felt bad for others because my property taxes, a couple of years ago, my property taxes on my home jumped. And so I hired an appraiser, went in and knocked them down about $400. My property taxes jumped again this last year. I went in and hired the appraiser again to go in and do evaluation. And my property taxes dropped $213 this time. So there's about $600 I saved. But what most people don't realize is these property taxes, they go to support the schools, the county, the water district, the county, and, the city. But they're supposed to get their money based on property values. That's supposed to evaluate it. And unfortunately, the county hires appraisers, and are you going to bite the hand that feeds you? You know, these appraisers and these private companies that they hire, they're going to come up, or they're not going to get hired again. They're going to come up with an above value.
Yeah.
And most people don't know it. The county's supposed to get along on less money. The state, the city, the school boards, they're supposed to get on less money. What they do, they just either raise the mill levy or raise your property values. And I thought, well, that's great. I've saved about $600 because I looked at that thing and I said, I know my property's not worth that much. I couldn't sell it for that. Yeah. I know that. And so I said, I'm going to go hire a guy, I know an appraiser. I'm going to have him go do the comps and compare it. And I found out the appraisals that the county was using and the school board, the appraisers that these people have hired to get their values up, they're wrong. They're just plain wrong, and they're wrong all over this county. People could not sell that, but most people don't. Well, I'm not gonna fight it, and so you keep handing money to people who ought to get along on less. It's kind of like the old story about the king's children. Who's fasting? Who's taking a hit? Well, the government employees with their government appraisers, they're doing just fine, thank you. They find a way that they may take a hit, but it's nothing like the hit you're taking, and it's nothing like the drop in property values you're experiencing. The king's children are being taken care of. And I just thought all these people out there paying all these taxes, they could have done the same thing I did. They could have done the exact same thing I did, but they lay down.
Yeah.
And they don't...
most people would rather suffer than right themselves by abolishing.
They don't know how to fight it. They don't know it's may cost you $180, $200 to go hire an appraiser a couple of times to go do the comps for you. But if you sense that your property is being overtaxed, you better get an appraiser to look at it, because the one that the government employees have hired, he's not going to be knocking your values down to where it ought to be, or he's not going to get back in to do any appraisal work at all.
That's right.
I mean, that's you don't not bite the hand that feeds you. You're going to have those values up there and being able to justify it and say, hey, that's too bad about people who are asleep at the wheel. They're willing to keep throwing this money at us and let us spend it, protect the king's children, the government employees, then too bad for you.
Can I ask how much it costs to get an appraisal?
Yeah,
versus how much you saved?
Well, the savings was about $600. The cost for the two appraisals was about $420, something like that. But here's the kicker. It cost me $400 to save $600, but that appraisal, that's going to save me money last year and the year before, because I did it 2 years ago last time. It's going to save me money this time, next time, and next time, and next time. And
there's
so
I'm talking
effect there. Yeah, there's a residual value there, because of course, if they keep raising it and I have to go in and fight them again and get comps, then maybe I won't come out as well. But I'm thinking I'll probably get a $5 or $6 for one return before they figure out how to jack it back up again. But yeah, people, you need to wake up, because your government is supposed to get along on less money if it's based on property values and mill. And if you don't wake up and smell the roses, you're going to get ripped. And that's what I don't know. That's probably a terrible thing to say, but well, it's the truth.
Yeah.
Wake up. Go get an appraiser, because if you don't think your property's worth that much, whether it's a business or a home, then you raise the issue. When I fought them a couple of years ago, they said that they had the highest number of protests they'd had in ever, at least the people that were there. So many people that were so mad because their taxes went up. But again, the vast majority of the people, they just laid back and took the hit. And I thought, okay, I know an appraiser. I know a good man. He knows how to run comps. And what they do, it's not that you're cheating. You're not cheating. What you're saying is, my house is right here. It has this much value. It has this much resale value in my neighborhood. Now you're going to go out and find comps that say this house, a similar home sold over here for this much money. A similar home sold over here for this much money. Then they get a third comp. This house over here sold for this much money. And so what you do, you put together not just, hey, my taxes are too high, and you stomp your foot and scream and say, I don't like what you've done to me. No, that doesn't work. That's not what this appraisal business is about. You've got to have real live values. And unfortunately, those who work for the government, they're not quite as careful in evaluating what you could sell your home for as you might be. So yeah, wake up, folks. They're supposed to be on a diet along with the rest of us. And they'll scream and holler about the diet they're on, but if you realize that the typical government employee makes more than twice what the typical... Doggone, I forgot to turn my phone off. My kid set this thing on a dog bark, and better turn it off, because they know I don't know how to work these things worth a darn.
Though, I think as people start to get involved, one thing that happens is you get opportunities presented to you to make a difference, and the stronger your desire, the more opportunities that will come. Realize it's not going to be overnight. We're not going to change the world overnight, but we do need to get involved and do our part. And the more people that get involved and do their part, the bigger difference we can make. And it's just a matter of taking that first step. And the way will be opened, and you'll be introduced to people that you can influence, and that can influence you as well. So just make that first step. That's what we need. More people to make that step.
Yeah, more involvement, and I think you're right. And I think another thing people need to do is pray. You know, if you pray, you'll find good people.
Yeah.
If you get yourself informed, get yourself informed, run with the right people. And again, as you were saying, a lot of these teachers, they're good people. I know that. My own mother used to be a public school teacher. I'm not cussing everybody that works in the public school system. They need to be praised. They need to be supported. I would not do what a lot of them do, for a living, especially as the homes break down.
Mm-hmm.
Or they're no longer taught to respect authority. And what I feel bad about is those who want to violate God's laws, or those who wish to say that there is no God and there are no absolutes, there are no rights and wrongs, question this and that, question morals, the humanist approach. That's what's being pushed in our school district. These people are not just enduring the Antichrist crowd, they're embracing them. That's the leadership. That's where the steerage is headed. And like you say, more people get involved, we can make a difference. And people have to get involved. This amount of money, if you're we're going to do it for the children, well, let's get good people who are doing it for the children. And get people who are not embracing humanism. Not people that are not saying, well, we've got to teach evolution. And we've got to teach socialism. We've got to teach humanism. That's not true. That is not true. And this sex education stuff that they do, a lot of that does not have to be done the way it's done, where you teach people, hey, here's how to use a gun, and by the way, here's how you have bulletproof vests that work most of the time because you're not smart enough. And again, God's out of it. Rights and wrong is out of it. Yeah. Morals are out of it. I remember when I used to homeschool years ago, and I thought it was just plain neat. I was on the board of directors of a private school for 15 years, American Heritage. One of the things I really liked about that is they read the Book of Mormon every day. Yeah. Every day. And we could open with prayer. And we could sing a song that had Christ's name in it. You know, there are some advantages, and I didn't have to teach my children evolution. Well, anyway, I wish you had won, brother.
Oh, I appreciate it. I appreciate you having me on the show, and I appreciate all you're doing to spread the word as well.
Well,
good man.
I hope more people go to this website that Oak and Susie have put up, SaveASD.com, and see who these people that run the district need to be weaned away from. See what their values are and compare them to your values. Because they're not your values, folks. They're not your values. And we need to either change the administrators or change their direction and change who their friends are. I'd hate to think that in the next life I was going to have a picture of me with a big smile next to a communist.
Yeah.
And I'm putting humanist slogans up on the school walls, and somehow I'm going to have to explain that someday on why I did that. But yeah, more people get involved. Support these people that are in there. Well, hey, we're down to just 3 or 4 minutes. What do you want? What do you want to give us for your parting words on this?
Oh, I think what I just mentioned before of just get involved. I think we've got a lot of opportunity, and it's like service. You know, a lot of times we are a little reluctant, or it's not convenient, and so we drag our feet all the way to the service project. But once we're there, we're glad we went, and we are rejuvenated. And I think if we can just get more people involved, whether you've got children in the public school or not, just get involved in the school community councils and find out what's going on. Volunteer in classrooms. Do what we can to improve society and the community, so that we don't have this philosophy that it needs to be the government to solve all of our problems. We're big boys and girls, and we are smart, we know what's right and wrong, and we just need to act accordingly and help our friends and neighbors around us do the same.
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate you running. I have a little more appreciation than most people of what you went through, what your family's going to go through, or what they've already gone through. Maybe some of the firestorm will settle down now, but you've raised issues, and you've helped wake the town and tell the people. And I want to thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, hey, you have a good day.
Okay, you too. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Well, I enjoy that man. I enjoy talking to that man. I enjoy you people out there that are listening. I hope you'll join us again next week as we get back more into more of the Constitution, more of the stuff there. But talk to your neighbors, rouse the people, get involved. There's going to be another election coming up next year, the year after. Get involved. The way the Lord judges us is what have we done with our time for our fellow man. That's one of the things. And the way we vote, what we're willing to force our fellow man to do, that's part of it also. So have a good day. This is Hans Anderson. We'll see you next Friday, 10 to 11, and thank you.
If tomorrow all the things were gone, I'd work for all my life, and I had to start